Life is a tough teacher. We get the test first, and then we learn the lesson. This morning, I want to talk about a few of the tests that I've been through and the lessons that I've learned, but more importantly, the community that came alongside to help me learn those lessons. Because we aren't made to do life alone. So, as Julie said, I have been a member of the Air Force my entire life. 10 years old was a fabulous birthday for me because I got my ID card. And that ID card has changed colors, but I'm still a proud holder of that ID card. My dad was in the Air Force, and in his command, we moved every 2 years, 24 months in one location. We got those boxes unpacked, we did the inventory, right? There's something always broken, and we lost all of our things twice. But it's just things. And my brother and I grew up with two mantras that our parents lived by. One, if you don't ask, the answer's no. If you ask, you have a chance. If you have a chance, take it, and if it changes your life, let it. The other one was we got embedded in our community. Now, when I say community, each and every one of you has a different definition of community. So when I say community today, I want you to think about your community. What does your community look like? Is it your neighborhood? Is it your unit? Is it your kids' school? Is it church? The Texas Hold'em group that you meet with? Whatever your community looks like, I want you to think about that community. But because we got embedded in our community, whether it was Omaha, Nebraska, or Okinawa, Japan, San Vito, Italy, or San Antonio, Texas, we got embedded in that community as soon as we got those boxes unpacked. My brother was 2 years younger, and we would sit in the back seat with the Rand McNally map, way before GPS. And we would tell our parents where to turn, and we got lost in our cities. We met the most fascinating people and went to the most fascinating places. And each person we met became part of our community. And that community came alongside of us no matter where we were stationed. October of 1983, I was 15 years old. My dad was the wing commander at Lindsey Air Station in Wiesbaden, Germany. We had moved to Germany for the third time 3 months beforehand. But guess what? We got embedded in our community. But October of 1983 was a fabulous month in my life. The first week in October, I played Steffi Graf in tennis and beat her. She was 14 years old and ranked 98th in the world. I was 15 years old and I was unranked. I was riding high. See, my schedule at 15 years old, I would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, go to tennis practice, go to my junior year in high school, and then go to golf practice after school because it was golf season. That was not a schedule my parents wanted for me. They wanted to sleep in. But I was driven, and I still am. But my parents knew the value in what I wanted to do. So that first week in October was an exciting time for me. The second week in October, I won the Dodds High School Golf Championship for all the DoD high schools in Germany. And I beat the number one boy by 5 strokes. I didn't get a trophy for that one, but that was pretty special for me. So I had just given up swimming too. So I knew 3 strokes at the age of 15. The butterfly stroke that took me to the Junior Olympics in Tokyo, Japan years before, the backhand stroke, and the golf stroke. The last week in October, I experienced a massive stroke. I was born with a malformed vein in the very center of my brain. It explained the headaches I had been having for 2 months. The doctors assumed that it was because of my schedule and that we had just moved overseas. But they didn't understand that we got embedded in our community. And I'm an uber extrovert, and I know I can walk into a room and I can suck the air right out of an introvert's lungs. The prognosis was if I lived, I would never walk again. I don't take no for an answer. It was 6 days after the Beirut bombing of the Marine barracks when I had my stroke. We were at Hahn, Germany on vacation. They air-evac'd me, or they sent me to Landstuhl. But the neurosurgeons in Landstuhl were tag teaming in the hallway. They were performing surgeries on the Marines. So our community came alongside of us, and my Sunday school teacher was a doctor at the hospital in Wiesbaden, and his roommate at the Air Force Academy was the #1 neurosurgeon in the Air Force, stationed in San Antonio at Wilford Hall. So our community gathered alongside, and they got me air-evac'd to San Antonio for surgery. It was a 9-hour surgery, and the prognosis was I still wouldn't walk again. But I told you I'm driven, right? My schedule beforehand. And our community came alongside because we were embedded in that community. It took me 1.5 years to learn to walk again. And I write with my left hand now. I don't have the fine motor movements in my right hand. But my friends would come over after school and teach me how to crawl. We would have crawling races, and you got it. I wanted to win each and every one of those crawling races because I'm still competitive. My physical therapist would come to the house and help me enough to where I got back on the golf course. And to this day, I pride myself in getting women's longest drive. My occupational therapist kind of ticked me off, though. At 16 years old, she told my mom for occupational therapy, I needed to do housework. I think my mom had something going on with her. They had a contract or something. But that work and having the community come alongside to help me, I was able to walk across stage to get my high school diploma without a cane or without assistance. Now, my college scholarships were taken away, rightfully so, but when we lived in San Antonio, my dad became a Texas resident. I received a full scholarship because I was handicapped to go to the University of Texas in Austin. Hook 'em. Yeah. 53,000 students in 1985 when I go to UT. You would think for someone like me going to the university that had the largest population of any university in the United States, it would be easy, but it wasn't. And I needed to get embedded in my community. I had grown up in the military. My community was the ROTC building. I was not able to raise my right hand to take the oath of service, but I raised my left hand to volunteer. And that's how I tried to serve. I joined Silver Wings. My junior year in college, I went to a party, an ROTC party, and there was one person in the room I didn't know. And guess what? As that uber extrovert, I made a beeline right to him. And I said, "Hi, I'm Kristen Anderson." He stepped back a little bit. Said, "Hi, I'm Don Christy. We can never get married." So I'm thinking, what kind of pickup line is that? He saw the confused look on my face, and he said, "You would be Kristen Christy." I think I told you I don't take no for an answer, right? We were engaged, and we were married right after he was commissioned. And off we went to Grand Forks, North Dakota. And guess what? We got embedded in our community. If you all have ever been to Grand Forks, it's a lot like Edwards. Far away from town, right? And with the extreme winters we had to get embedded in our community. And it was a great place to start raising our family. We had Ryan, our oldest son, in Grand Forks. And of course, when he was pulling alerts out in the missile field, or when he was TDY, things happened, right? Those TDY gremlins come out. The batteries in our smoke detectors exploded one night, all of them. But guess what? He wasn't home. Our basement flooded when I was 8 months pregnant with Ryan, our oldest. He wasn't home. But it was our neighborhood and our community that came alongside, and we helped each other out. And then in '95, we got orders for Colorado Springs to Falcon Air Station, which is now Schriever Air Force Base. And he was going to be a space operator, satellite operator. He went off to Vandenberg to space school, and then we went to Colorado Springs. And let me tell you, fabulous community in Colorado Springs. And it was the first time I had ever lived off an installation. I had always lived on base or post my whole life. So we bought a house, and we experienced a brand new community. And that community included people who didn't quite understand the military. So I prided myself on being an ambassador for the military in Colorado Springs. And in 1997, 2 years after we moved to Colorado Springs, Don came home and said, Kristen, my career active duty is just not going the way I wanted it to, and I was hoping. So I think I'm going to separate from the Air Force. It's the big one, Elizabeth. That shows you how old I am, right? But it rocked my world because it was the only way of life I knew. And I said I was going to have to give up my ID card. Because my ID card was part of my identity. I had already lost my identity after my stroke, and then I was going to go through it again. But he said, hold on, wait a minute, there's something called the Air Force Reserve. I was all in. So he joined the reserve. He was a contractor. He was a reservist as a traditional reservist until he was asked to be a squadron commander. He was a squadron commander for the GPS. Working with the active duty, he became full-time reservist, and in 2003, he came home, and I was so proud of him. He was asking for my permission, but he said, Kristen, I've been tasked with getting volunteers to go to Baghdad on a deployment, and I don't feel right unless my name is at the top of the list. So I had heard that supervisors or managers say, go, and a true leader says, let's go. And Don said, let's go that night. And he knew I was going to give my blessing. Because even though I couldn't raise my right hand to take that oath of service, I presented my left hand to take a vow to be a military spouse. And Don was the only one chosen for that deployment. He was second in command of the Baghdad airport. We heard about him meeting Donald Rumsfeld on the flight line and Ted Nugent signing his gun holster when he was there for a USO tour. 4.5 months later, he came home. And he was different. We hear it during pre-deployment, post-deployment, right? That things can be different. Don was more withdrawn. He wasn't sleeping. It was tough. And he couldn't talk about it. It wasn't clearance related. There were things that he couldn't talk about. And when he earned that Bronze Star, I know he did not get a Bronze Star for having Toby Keith take a nap on his couch in his office. But he couldn't talk about it. We call those sacred spaces. We actually communicated. And we decided he had sacred spaces he couldn't talk about, and I had things that I called my sacred spaces that I didn't want to burden him with while he was gone, with Ryan and Ben. In 2005, he was picked up for Army War College. And I thought, this is going to be a saving grace for us. So we were at Maxwell. My dad was at Air War College, and it was a fabulous year for us. I was in 6th grade. It was a reconnecting year. And I thought Army War College was going to do that for us. And I was doubly excited because I was going to learn Army E's. And I actually did a Joint Forces dictionary for our spouses. And it was all the acronyms. MOS equals AFSC. Yeah? F and G crosses all the services. Uh-huh. And it truly was a fabulous year. It was tough because as a reservist back in the 90s, we thought we were going to homestead. We had built a custom home in Colorado Springs, and we thought we were going to be there, and his whole career was going to be there until he was picked up for Army War College. He wasn't going to fill out the form. And I told him, from what I grew up with, if you don't ask, the answer's no. If you ask, you have a chance. If you have a chance, take it. If it changes your life, let it. So we did that. And we were told we were going to the Pentagon after he graduated. And guess what? The Air Force changed its mind. I know, shocker. 6 weeks before graduation, they said, nope, we need you back in Colorado Springs. We tried to buy our house back. They wouldn't sell it to us. But I got to tell you, it was the toughest PCS we've ever had. I likened it to double Dutch jump rope, where you're watching both the ropes and you're trying to gauge where you're going to jump in without tripping. And we tripped. In April of 2008, we received a ring at the door, and it was the coroner. Don had taken his life 3 days before he was pinning on Colonel. Our boys were 14 and 12. And I remember myself saying, my poor boys. My poor boys. I've heard of the word catatonic. I experienced that night with my kids. But our community came alongside because life is a brutal teacher. We get the test first and then we learn the lesson. Ben, our youngest, was 12 years old. On his 20th birthday, I received this voicemail.
I did that. I miss Dad so much. I can't live without him. I can't. I need him right now. I need him so much. I just need someone right now, Mom. I need Dad right now. I can't live without him. It's the worst year of my life. Mommy, I'm not okay. I'm not okay right now, Mom. I really need help. I really need help. I wish you answered.
Can you hear the desperation in my baby's voice and the abandonment? That was 8 years after his dad's suicide. Mommy, where are you? Our older son, Ryan, was 14, and this is what I have from him. We are not having technical difficulties. Ryan has been missing for 1,453 days today. Next week, it will be 4 years since I've seen our oldest son. I am not a therapist. I don't have letters behind my name. I feel like I'm a SME in overcoming and perseverance and resiliency. And I wish God wouldn't trust me so much. But I tell you, I stand here on a firm foundation of faith, and I am a daughter of the King. And that helped us get us through. But what's left of me and my family? Both of my kids have attempted. If you think about it, their role model did it. So in my humble opinion as a mom, I think suicide is contagious. But what else is contagious? A smile, a kind word. Have you ever said something nice to someone just to say it? And if you can remember back how it made you feel, it was like this warmth inside. And I guarantee the person who you were saying those good things to, they felt the same way. The power of a kind word. We do not know what we are battling. Each one of us is battling. And ladies and gentlemen, there is no room on this battlefield for strangers. There is no room on this battlefield for silence. We were not made to do life alone because life is a cruel teacher. We get the test first and then we learn the lesson. But more importantly, we help others through their lessons. We can't always be there for the pop quiz. And we learn lessons in our tests every day. And I challenge you to come alongside someone else who's going through a 10 out of 10 on the pain scale. We've all been through a 10 out of 10 on the pain scale. Please don't compare your test with my test. We can compare our pain levels, and we can have an understanding of that. And we can help each other. We can tutor each other through that lesson. I want to talk about some acronyms. We live in a world of acronyms. Some acronyms that helped me and my family get through, and I use these every day. And there's one on here that's not on here that I just heard about that I love too. No. I told you I don't take no for an answer. It means next opportunity. As supervisors, you all have had to say no, right? You know that no has to be an answer, but it means next opportunity. And when you have someone in your command that you have got to say no to, it can be devastating for that person. If they have to change their AFSC and they received a no, sometimes they have blinders on and they can't see what that next opportunity is. They can't see the avenues for their talents. And they need help removing those blinders. Help them find their next opportunity. Just don't stop at no. And effort never dies. The effort, no matter how small, it can be saying hi with a smile, or I really like your hair from this morning. Thank you. In fact, 2 weeks after Don's suicide, I went to Panera Bread, and there was a 19-year-old behind the counter. He said, "Ma'am, I really like your hair." I really like my hair too. When I'm cool, Mom, I'm Rogue from X-Men. When I'm not so cool, I'm Cruella de Vil. But I received this silver lining a year after my stroke. I've earned every single one of these babies. Now at 16, I was too young to be gray, so I colored it. Now it's silver. Semantics, right? But when Jerry said that to me, I lost it. Tears were flowing, booger bubbles were popping all over the cash register, and this poor kid was like, "What did I do?" And I said, Jerry, you have no idea what me and my family are going through right now. And that meant so much. And I challenged Jerry. I said, if something like that, if you have a kind thought about someone, do not keep it inside. They need to hear that. They need to know. 12 years later, I'm still friends with Jerry. He's 29. He has a family now. And how did I know his name? His name tag. I saw him as a person. He saw me as a person. But that effort that he put in, I remember 12 years later. Your effort never dies. The positive effort that you put into things does not die. Fail. I feel like I failed as a spouse and as a mother. And my counselor had to tell me what this acronym stood for. First attempt in learning or further attempt in learning. It does not mean final attempt in learning. We learn all the time. What I don't want to do is fail at the same thing over and over. And when I heard the Airman's Creed and that last sentence was, I will not fail, it doesn't say we aren't going to make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes, but we are not going to leave an airman behind, and we are going to put effort into everything that we do. First or further attempt in learning, never final attempt in learning. Another F, four-letter word, fear. Don died 12 years ago. I finally found my story and found my voice last year. But this was what was keeping me back. And again, it was my counselor and my resources and my community that we were embedded in that helped me understand that it was false evidence appearing real. We all have fears. And I bet if you ask the person sitting next to you what their fear was or is, it's not the same as yours. How do we turn fear into being fearless? I don't know if I'll get rid of all of my fears, but I try and overcome them. I try and get outside my comfort zone. My comfort zone, I want to be my escape room because I want to overcome these fears. They're false. They're false evidence. Free. This is one I've coined, and even for an uber extrovert like me, it is difficult and it can be tiring, but it is so worth it. Foster relationships energetically everywhere. Does that mean you have to come in and cartwheels and jump in their face? No, although sometimes I'd like to. It's looking someone in the eye, using their name from their name tag, and genuinely asking how they're doing. It's fostering those relationships. Now, relationships is plural. So if you're an introvert and your community is very small, that's okay. It's still plural. It's relationships. If it's a big community, that's even better to get strong. But we're all wired differently. I don't know if I could handle another one like me. But foster those relationships. Hope. Hold on, pain eases. Some people say hold on, pain ends. I think you understand why I will argue that it won't end. But we have people in our community, in our sphere of influence, that are the ease in hope. They help ease the pain. And because there's hope for tomorrow, there's power in today. So how do you go from hopeless to hope? Hopeful. Your community. We are not made to do life alone. This battlefield has no room for strangers. There's no room for silence, because life is a tough teacher. We get the test first, and then we learn the lesson. And how do we come together as a community? So I want to talk now about how our community came alongside. They showed up. 12 years later, I don't remember what people said, but I remember every single person who was in my living room and kitchen after the coroner left. I remember every single person. It's burned into my memory. They showed up. They didn't have to say anything, and in fact, some of them didn't say anything. They stayed there in the corner, or they talked with one another. They didn't come up to us. They showed up. And they did something. They didn't say something necessarily, but they did something. A friend of ours broke into our house the next morning, and she made pancakes. She didn't ask, because I would have told her I hated pancakes. They were the best tasting pancakes I've ever had, because they were made with love. She showed up and she did something. My best friend and her 2 boys were my kids' best friend. She took them out of school for 3 days, and they lived with us for 3 days. She slept on Dawn's side of the bed so it wasn't empty. They showed up and they did something. About a week after Dawn's funeral, the doorbell rang again. You can imagine how I was feeling. I opened that door, and there is Kathy. She was at Carlisle with us. They had orders for Florida. She had a suitcase in her hand. She flew to Colorado Springs and stayed with us for a week. She didn't ask. She showed up and she did something. And they were intentional. They stayed in contact with us long after the first 30 days, which typically the communication wanes off. They stayed in contact with us. They were intentional. So guess what? Since I've got the stage, I'm giving you all homework. I want you to be intentional today. Tonight, before you go to bed, preferably when you walk out and you're in the parking lot ready to go to work, I want you to scroll through your contacts on your cell phone. We all have people that we have their contact information for, and we haven't reached out to them in a while. I want you to scroll through that contact list, and a name is going to pop out at you. I want you to text that person. Texting is easy. With a phone call, you may be interrupting them. They may not recognize your number. So make sure to put your name on the end of your text. But a text is easy. They can read it at any time, and they'll respond when they're ready. But I guarantee you about 75% of you are going to get a text message back or a phone call back within 2 days. Because they are going to need to hear from you. I've gotten feedback, and I would love your feedback on your homework assignment, how you were intentional. I've gotten feedback from an airman who reached out to someone he hasn't talked to in 2 years. And his high school friend is going through the same test he went through 5 years before. She's trying to find services for her mother who's going through dementia. He went through that 5 years ago with his dad. And guess what? He is tutoring her through that lesson because he was intentional. There are a lot of other stories, and I want to hear your stories. But it's just connecting, and it's being intentional with each other. More importantly, I call it being compassionately intrusive. We have got to be compassionately intrusive with one another. We have got to be noticers. Have you noticed that someone who's typically a Tigger has been an Eeyore for an extended period of time? I'll tell you, I have my Eeyore days. Have you asked that person how they're doing? And if you have, they probably said, I'm fine. But you know in your gut that something's up. I want you to be compassionately intrusive. I want you not to be pesky, right? Just every once in a while, check in on them. Be intentional. And use your resources. We used our resources. Our community came alongside and presented resources to us that we didn't know about. We weren't being proactive. We had no idea. I didn't know I was going to have a stroke. We didn't know Don was going to end up taking his life. But I do now, and I have those resources. But you've got resources. It doesn't matter what installation you are stationed. You've got resources. These are national resources. You've got resources here. You've got helping agencies here at Edwards. The chaplain's office is 100% confidential. And you do not need to be religious to go see them. 100% confidential. Get it off your chest. We've got agencies that have different names at different installations. Airmen and Family Readiness, Military and Family Readiness. We've got MFLAC. We've got Family Advocacy. And then we have these national resources. And feel free to take a picture with your phone. These will be available too. We've got the National Suicide Hotline. Again, another number that has a number of different names. The Veteran Crisis Line is the same number. The Military Crisis Line is the same number. You just dial 1 after you dial a number. But what I'm really excited about is when you're in the throes of depression, you don't have the wherewithal necessarily to dial a 1-800 number. And they're coming out with a 3-digit number. It'll be 988. It's not active yet. It will be announced. You dial 3 numbers. Most importantly, it is not only if you are in crisis. If someone within your sphere of influence is in crisis and you need to help them and you don't know what to do, you are not armed to fight that battle, they will help you. It's okay to call and say, I'm calling for a friend. No, really. But if you would rather text, there are texting possibilities. There are online possibilities. I'm old school. I like phone call or eyeball to eyeball. My son likes to text. If he calls me, something's up. But there are resources for you. The Defense Center of Excellence, Military One Source is a great organization. I've had a number of friends that have received free counseling through them. The Be There, the DOD campaign. If you post your homework online, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, that's fine. But the homework that I gave you, tag Be There. But I'd like to hear your feedback, and I'll give you my information in a little bit. There's the crisis, so many resources. Please use them. They're there for you to use. So my E from hope, hold on, pain eases. So this is my new groom, Sean. I used to say my current husband, but it sounds so temporary and I'm not doing it again. So I told him we will eventually be married 30 years and you'll still be my new groom. And I'm very proud of myself for being a recruiter. So when we met on Match.com, it works. He was a Navy reservist. I blued him up. He is a cyber gladiator at Peterson Air Force Base. He's a traditional reservist. Sean has been our E. He has eased the pain of life's tests for us. I don't know many spouses that can live in the shadow of a previous life. And Sean does willingly because he understands the value of our story. And this is my younger son, Ben, the voicemail. Ben turns 24 next week. He graduated from the University of Arizona in aerospace engineering in May. In February, he called me. He says, Mom, I've gone viral. And I said, it's okay, honey, you can go to urgent care. It's all right. Moms have to embarrass their kids, right? I said, what's up? He says, well, I've gone viral on Twitter. And it was as a result of a hobby that his counselor recommended he take up in high school. See, Ben was an athlete like his mama. He played football, basketball, wrestled, and did track. And that's how he helped combat his anxiety and depression. But in college, he didn't have the scholarships. So his counselor said, when you graduate and go to college, what are you going to do? What hobby are you going to take up to help combat anxiety and depression? Well, the girl that he liked at the time decided to start a crochet club before school. So guess what Ben did? He learned how to crochet. And in college, he joined a fraternity and he became a closet crocheter. He crocheted a halter top for his girlfriend, and unfortunately, she broke up with him before he had a chance to gift it to her. So he modeled the halter top himself, took a selfie, posted it on Twitter and Instagram. He said, "Mom, I have 500 orders for halter tops." He said, "The hobby I took up to help combat anxiety and depression is causing me more anxiety." He was in his last semester of school taking 20 credit hours of aerospace engineering and looking for a job. He says, "I don't know what to do." I said, "What do you think you want to do?" He taught his frat brothers how to brochet, semantics, right? Taught them how to brochet and subcontracted them out to fulfill orders. I said, "You should have gotten a business degree, dude." But I'm very proud of him, so I will tell you, I work for MTSI. MTSI hired Ben, and he works right here at the 452nd as a contractor. And he is trying to get embedded in his community. He lives in Lancaster. His MTSI coworkers and his coworkers at the unit have been great supporters for him. And I'm very, very proud of Ben for letting us use that voicemail. That voicemail is hard to hear, I know. But there's no room for silence on this battlefield. And you may not need it in your life, but I hope you can share that voicemail with others that may need it, to help them pause and rethink their choices. So I talked about resources. Oh, I want to talk about, so we have over 1,500 days of observance. Today is National Encouragement Day. May 17th is National Ice Cream Day. It's every day in my house. That's my size, TLC. I'm thick like cornbread. I am no longer in shape. But we don't have a National Survivors Day, and I've been working on it for 7 years. We are all survivors of something. Remember, I talked about the 10 out of 10 on the pain scale. Because life is a tough teacher, we get the test first, and then we learn the lesson. The city of Colorado Springs, our county, and the state of Colorado have proclaimed March 4th as a day for survivors, and I'm working on our administration to get it as an executive order for next year. And it's March 4th because no matter what the obstacle, we put one foot in front of the other and we march forth and conquer. But more importantly, we march forth and conquer together because we need to help each other through those lessons in life. So I talked about resources, and I want to be a resource for you. So this is my personal cell phone number. After that voicemail 4 years ago, I don't turn off my phone. I may restart it, but I don't turn off my phone. You all are special, but everyone gets my cell phone number. Today is my 77th presentation, and I get text messages from all over. And sometimes it's encouraging for me. It's just they wanted to reach out. They wanted to be intentional, and I was the person that they chose. And it makes me feel so good. Gives me a smile. Puts a little pep in my walk. Email, Facebook, Twitter. I don't have an Instagram account. Ben's going to help me with that. LinkedIn. I'm at Peterson Air Force Base. I am the chair for the Military Affairs Council there, so I work with all the installations. If any installation in Colorado Springs can get a hold of me. And importantly, I understand the link for our public service announcement was sent out this week. But this is the link. It is open source. It is yours to use in whatever capacity you need to. Life is a tough teacher, is a brutal teacher, is a cruel teacher. We get the test first, and then we learn the lesson. But we were not made to do life alone. And there's no room on this battlefield for strangers or silence. No matter what that test, we put one foot in front of the other, and we march forth and conquer together. Thank you.